Hey guys, K2's Retro Workshop. Today, it's Color Classic Day. More specifically for this guy. This one I've had for about 5 or 6 years. I'm actually really happy with the way it is. There's a mod I've done on here that I'm going to end up doing on here. And so I want to keep this one like it is. But I managed to get this chassis with no logic board, no backplate, for a pretty good price locally about 6 months ago, and which worked out perfect because I actually had everything I wanted to put in here, but I just needed a chassis to do it, and I didn't want to break into this guy for it because, like I said, I'm very happy with the way it is. So let's take a look at some of those components. So for our upgrade, some of our parts are fairly standard. Blue SCSI version 2, this has the wireless function installed on it, and I'm excited about being able to mount CD images and stuff. This being upgraded later will potentially be able to play a lot of stuff that requires CD to play. And the Color Classic doesn't have a built-in CD-ROM drive, so really nice to be able to mount images instead of hooking up a fat CD-ROM to it all the time. Fan upgrade, whatever. Sound upgrade. This sound upgrade is really nice, and I'll go over more a little bit later, but this sound upgrade does require a 575 donor chassis. In that donor chassis that I managed to acquire, don't worry, Electronics Recycler did like a hack and slash. I saw it in a bin right before I was leaving, so I did not sacrifice a 575 for this. Mine is still sitting over here in the workshop. This has some donor parts we need, along with the sub chassis, to do some upgrades. I've already done one on this guy here, and we're going to on this one. There's also some parts we may need for the VGA mod. They're basically the same circuit between the Color Classic and the 500, but they've expanded where components sit, and there's some stuff installed on here that isn't on the other. So this little blue capacitor here, for example, doesn't exist on here, but does really help your horizontal width adjustments. So we have that. The logic board here has been recapped. You see my red caps here, 36 megs of RAM. And yeah, I use this. I swapped this into my 575 after repairing it, and it's worked for, I don't know, 20, 30 hours worth. So we're in good shape here. The cherry on the top of this Power Mystic build is the Daystar 601 upgrade card. This isn't the PDS version. This actually plugs into the 68040's processor slot. You take the stock processor out, you slap it on here, and then you plug it in. With utility, you can switch between the two. And there's not very many videos of this online. I actually didn't see anyone but Sean at Action Retro with one of these, and his is even missing the level 2 cache board here. So it'll be interesting to see if there's a performance difference there with the limited benchmarking we were able to see there. And yeah, but I was thinking about it the other day, and I deal with 386s and 486s a lot, and the Mac era that I deal with isn't that much different. And let me explain a little more on that one. So here are the processors that I work with the most in my workshop. And on the left you have PC, on the right you have Apple. And so starting at the top here, we've got the 68030 on the right. This is a stand-in. This is actually the embedded version, but whatever. And on the left you've got the Intel 386. Now these are very similar. They've got very limited cache. Basically it's limited to holding instructions and such. There's basically no level 1 cache. They added built-in memory management units over their predecessors, and floating point units are all external. These two are also notable in that they had versions with 16-bit I/O and 24-bit addressing. So the 386SX here, and they didn't give a special name over here, but the Color Classic came with its stock. And that's actually part of why I firmly believe that the Color Classic in 256 color on a stock motherboard is actually one of the slowest of the compact Macs. It might be the slowest of the compact Macs when it comes to actually doing stuff because of that. So next down the line, we have the 486 and the 68040. These are very similar in that they greatly increase the level 1 cache, which helped the processor do its thing. You know, we've talked plenty about cache and what it does on this channel. And if you want a floating point unit, you've got to swap the processor because they were always internal. Now, there is a bit of divergence here because the 68040 only really ran up to about 40 megahertz. There aren't any models of this higher than that, and the 486 got clock doubled and quadrupled and whatever, so you can get these guys up to even 166 megahertz in some of the very late models. Now, next down the line, we have the Pentium overdrive upgrade for the 486 system, and we have the Daystar 601. These are both Pentium class upgrades. You've got 66 megahertz on the right and 83 on the left, but this was also available in a 63 megahertz model. These also included more cache, and they are 64-bit processors that are modified to work on a 32-bit data bus. Now, you might notice that the guy on the right is a lot bigger than the one on the left. That's because this guy on the left speaks the same language as all of these other guys. So anything this guy can do, these guys can also do outside of, like, you know, special instruction sets or something like that. Damn camera battery died. Maybe that means I need to shut up about this. Okay, so yeah, these all speak the same language. If you compile a program for x86, it's going to run on a 386, it's going to run on a Pentium, unless you're doing some special like Pentium-only instructions or something. But that aside, they all speak the same language. And that makes the upgrade easy, compact, and nice. On the Apple side, however, when they went from the 68K processors to the PowerPC processors, they changed the language that the processor speaks. Now, this isn't the first time Apple's done this. I guess technically the Apple II to the Macintosh line did it, going from the 6502 to the 68000. They did it again when they went from PowerPC to Intel, and they're doing it again now when they go from Intel to the ARM, you know, M1, M2 line here. So Apple's no stranger to this. But you can't emulate these guys at any appreciable speed at only 66 megahertz. There's just not enough overhead to emulate a 33 megahertz processor. So they made it where you can switch between these two. So I've pulled our sub-chassis here. Now, this analog board is actually from my original Color Classic. What I did when I got this machine was I recapped its analog board and stuck it in my other one, because that's really just like a plug-and-play, you know, stock system. And I didn't really want to mess, I really didn't want to mess with that analog board because I've already messed with this one a bunch. I tried a bunch of different styles of the VGA mod, you know, snip, snap, went back and forth. I hated it. So we're going to get it today, but I've hated it in the past, just so you know. Now, our sound mod. Our sound mod focuses on this section of the analog board right here. Stock, this guy, this crappy, terrible speaker, notice the theme with the Color Classic? Stock, it's just not that great. I would not pay current prices for one of these. So these two wires are soldered into here, and it snakes down through this hole, blah, 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 it goes down into there, and then you plug this guy in. Whatever. We're not doing that. You'll notice, though, that on the board, we've got two contacts here. These were donated from the LC500 analog board, and I just soldered them in here. You'll notice there's two connections here. Those are at the end of the wire off of our 575's donor speaker. Now let me show you where this speaker goes. Okay, so we did all this because we want to get to the bottom here. We take off the shield here. You can see it's kind of gross here. A lot of hours, and I'm fairly certain it was a smoker's house. So we're going to be cleaning this up. And to install this, we need to get to the underside like so. We need to remove this. I've already undone the tabs, so that's easier for me to get to. But we just need to move it out of the way just a little bit. And you'll notice some retaining tabs here. So this speaker quite literally slots in the front here, if I can get it, and then snaps into these two clips here. We run this wire up the front, and that's our speaker upgrade. Why didn't Apple just do this from the beginning? You end up with this crappy speaker in the back of the machine that you can't hear. This guy goes here, we run the wires up, they slot right into these connections here, so when you install the analog board, we touch, just like on the 575, and because this is at the front, and there are some nice giant holes in the bottom at the front, you wind up with much louder, much clearer sound. And yeah, I don't know why they didn't do this. I did this sound mod on my other Color Classic, and it is amazing. But like I said, you do kind of need a donor machine to do it. And yeah, so I don't know why they did it the way they did. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to take this guy down a little bit further, I'm going to clean it up, and then we'll get back to our other upgrades. So here's where the connectors are installed here. It's simple, you just slide it in from the back side, there's a wide area, it snaps into place, they stay there, and when you install your analog board, bam, you have sound. It's as simple as that. Apple, why didn't you just do this from the get-go? So I'm not going to bore you guys too much on this front. This is VGA Mod done right, whatever it's called now. You change out some components, retune your tank circuit and stuff over here, and you wind up with a proper VGA driving Color Classic analog board. So let me go ahead and do that part swap and stuff, and then I'll be right back with you. And here we are. Nice. It's been a very frustrating couple of weeks here in my workshop. Turns out Gigastone industrial cards are not a good choice for blue scuzzies. It has trouble writing to them for some reason, and I was chasing all kinds of problems with installers and all this other garbage. I threw a SanDisk industrial SD card in there, and bam, fired right up. Typical. VGA mod is done. Parts are swapped out here. I'm probably not going to include any of that footage. It's super boring. It's just through-hole soldering and part swaps, so yeah. But anyway, VGA mod is done. You can see it here. You can actually see it, because something else that has changed over the last couple weeks is I have a camera that will actually allow me to adjust the shutter speed so I can record these things without it being a flash fest. I was using my Panasonic GX9, but yeah, it doesn't have the fine adjustment, the synchro scan or whatever Panasonic calls it. So now we can actually see it, and it's nice and clear. So I've done some different things in here. I'm going to show you where I remote mounted the SD card and stuff, so let's go take a look at that real quick. So here on the back of the machine you can see the SD card is remote mounted here. I chose here because when I put the back plate on, it hides it. So it looks like a standard machine. Right, so we're back to being booted up. I don't know if you can see it here, but you'll notice that there's a little bit of wobbliness to the screen here. I had forgotten that when I did this mod before, that it's not really compatible with the 1800 RPM Noctua fan. It appears to switch poles and such at such a rate that it interferes perfectly with the screen to make it kind of wobbly. The stock fan doesn't do that. So what I'm actually going to have to do is go in later and clean up the factory fan and put it back in here. So that's something to note if you're doing this and you want to swap the fan out. And I don't think it's much quieter than the stock fan anyway. They're not very loud. Another thing is that this isn't the CRT we started the video with. See, The CRT that came with this screen, I think the shadow mask may have been messed up towards the bottom. So we had perfectly clear video until we got about halfway down, and then it started to fade and look kind of terrible. And I didn't think to record that before I swapped it out because I was so irritated that it was bad that I just did it. But I did this mod a long time ago, and remember I'd said at the beginning of the video that I didn't really like it. I kind of did it and undid it, did it and undid it. The other CRT was perfectly clear in VGA, and this one isn't. It's something that's very hard to capture on video because, so it's kind of irrelevant to you guys, but it's hard to capture on video because by the time I've gotten the sharpness and the focus tight enough that you can see the issue, we end up with that moire pattern all over the place, and it ruins what you're able to see. So, just trust me, this one isn't nearly as clear as it used to be. So, you know, my crap talking about VGA, I think has to do more with this particular CRT tube than it does with the mod not being clear. And there are some fine adjustment rings and stuff on the back of this tube that I can adjust. And that's going to be another installment. I'm not going to drag you through that here. I'm just saying that it looks decent enough. It'll work well enough. I'll leave the VGA mod as it is. And this is that VGA mod done the right way on the 68K forum. Actually, it was nice. I had posted on there what I had originally done for this mod on this board, and I'm glad that I had put that on there because when I went back to do my research, I was able to tell what components I needed. But, yeah, it seems to be doing great, looking great. So, let's get our upgrade card in here, and let's play around with that. So we've got our logic board here, we've got our upgrade card here with the processor already in it. I believe I already covered that. It's got the full 68040 in there. And there's a bit of a issue when you put this in. I've already kind of ripped this up so it's kind of loose, but this is where the stock battery goes here. Well, the upgrade card goes here. So we end up having to move the battery. And I snipped the wire off of this because I'm going to attach it to this guy, and then I'm going to get into that in a minute. But if we take this off here, we should be able to stick it on our little Z80 processor here that controls our serial I/O, and this guy with the Velcro underneath should be able to stick right here. So let me show you how I'm going to do that. Alright, so this is how I'm doing the battery on this guy. This is just a standard C-cell holder. I've soldered on the adapter that goes to the motherboard here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these cheap Harbor Freight flashlights here. This one I've actually opened up and I replaced with UV LEDs, but I don't know where any of my other cheap ones are. I think as they've died, I've just thrown them away. But what we're going to do is we're going to open this guy up and we're going to take out the adapter that it has. Now this adapter does basically 3 AAAs to C adapter. So this guy I can take and just pop in here, and like that I have my 4.5 volt battery pack with easy to replace batteries. I was going to do a 3 AA setup, but yeah, that's way too much power. I mean, it's standby. What does it need more for? Okay, so that's what we're going to do. Let's get it installed. Alright, so let's get this guy installed. So the little processor removal tool, the little comb, just goes up underneath the processor here. If it hasn't been pushed down too far so that it doesn't fit. But you can easily work it under there. Lift. And then on the other side, lift, and your processor's out. I don't know how many of you have actually fought one of these low insertion force sockets by hand, but great way to break the processor. So we can't just take this guy and stick it on here because the battery connector's underneath there. So what we have to do first is remove this cache chip, which is easier said than done sometimes, but I've taken it off a few times. Ugh. So this comes off. Come on. And then when this is installed, the pins for the battery are right underneath it. So it's not perfectly underneath it. That's because I'm installing it one pin. Okay. So it's right underneath it. So then we can install this guy. Done. Apologize if the camera is wobbling when I do that. And then our battery has to fish through the little hole in this cache chip. If it'll go. Oh wow, look at that. It's not the right size. Okay. Well, let me take this apart real quick and we'll get it to go through there. You guys can watch this. So the red wire goes in on the side with the little pin filler in there, and you just take a little screwdriver and pry this little pin right here up and then pull the wire out. It's as simple as that. I took the battery out because I don't want to short it. And then we do the same on the ground side. This is supposed to be installable by the consumer, says Apple. Oh man, get under there. But I feel like consumers may have been more capable back then, so maybe that's not totally untrue. They might have been able to manage it. Oh, we're almost out. Come on, there we go. So now we can feed our wires through here. And reassemble. So red was on the dead side. Come on. I don't know if that's what it's called, but whatever. That's what we're calling it for today. And then this guy goes in here. Okay. And we have our battery pack wired through. Plug her in. And then the cache chip can go on top. Not bad if you don't plan on taking it out very often. Fortunately, there's utilities to switch between processors, so we don't have to do this more than once. Okay, so we're installed there. Wiring's going to run over here. We'll just run it over the video chips, I guess. Put our battery pack right there. We can tuck these down a little bit. Velcro's not sticking to everything like I would like, but that's okay. So, there we have it. We're installed. We will throw our battery pack in and then install it in the machine. And in case you didn't know how these install in a Color Classic, you just do that. There we are. We have clearance for our SD card here, barely. We're kind of touching the battery pack there, but that's okay. It'll help hold it in, I think. And yeah, let's see if we get a better zoom in on that in a moment. So there we are. Winds up being a little bit of a tight fit. You can see here with the battery and the SD card reader. I do have limited space in here. So we're just going to have to deal with what we have. But I don't know, that does kind of make me want to move the SD reader to over here because we are blocking the our heatsink there from airflow. Yeah. I'll move that later. Let's get this guy booted up. All right. Everything is in there. Let's power it up. Nice. A little bit of a delay there, probably from having to load extra ROM stuff. The expansion card does have its own ROM, so it's going to have to sort stuff out when it gets to there. Yeah, there's a few things I still need to do on this machine. The fan needs to be swapped back to stock. I still haven't cleaned the factory one. And moving that SD card over will actually help quite a bit because it's in the way of the floppy drive. The floppy drive is dead in this machine, and I had to swap it out for another one I had. What's it doing? Is my blue SCSI like freaking out or what? Come on. You can do it. I have two images on here. Okay, it's booting the right one. Nice. All right. So, yeah, the floppy drive's bad on here. I took the stock one out to recap it, and oh man, was it a pain in the butt. I had to pull the logic board. I had to halfway pull the analog board. I had to get the blue SCSI out because the extension wire runs to the other side behind the floppy disk. Oh, God. That's very annoying. So I am going to work on getting that set up a little easier. And yeah, so here we are booting. I love the little icons going along the bottom. I don't know what it is about that. But the machine's been running with all of the copying, the system file copying, and everything that I've had to do, this machine has run for quite a long time. I had a concern about one of the capacitors on the analog board. It's a big, fat, short one that is by the diodes for the, I believe, 18-volt rail clamp. And that cap gets really hot. But it apparently doesn't get too hot because I have definitely run this thing for a good dozen hours since this video started and that recap was done. So, you know, maybe my concerns were invalid there. Let's go ahead and see in our system profiler. We're on the 040 processor, I could tell you that much, because it's not super fast. Let's see, yeah, it's 570 series. Okay, so I'm going to show you. Apparently, I didn't have to install any software on here because right here we have a 601 processor upgrade control panel, so I should be able to just click on. It says restart. Now, I have seen that you need to actually shut it down online, but we're going to try just doing a restart. Now, I have not booted this card yet. This is actually the first boot with the card installed in a motherboard since I picked it up. I never tested it. This is all brand new. So, we set our processor on. I'm going to restart like it says. And we'll see if we get a different... Yup, that's the PowerPC startup chime. So, it works. I am super happy about that. Now let's see if it boots. I had to reinstall the system software. Oh, I need to set that in PRAM. The PRAM stores where it keeps everything, and I haven't set which drive it needs to boot from for the startup disk, and there's 2 volumes on there that could potentially boot from. So once I get that figured out, once I get that set, it won't double boot like it's doing right now. So we're just waiting. This is the life of vintage computing, you know? Just hurry up and wait. This doesn't seem any faster than the 68040 on boot up here. That's kind of sad. Well, no, that's not true. That was quite a bit faster. Why do I have a feeling that it booted on the other volume instead of this one? Mac OS computer 8.1. My background's changed. And the 601 thing isn't there. Yeah, it booted the other volume. Oh my god. Okay. Well, let's go in and tell it to boot in the right volume. Startup disk. Let's set this. Okay. And restart again. Stupid thing. Hopefully it'll boot, and it didn't choose to boot from the other one because it can't. Also, another issue that I used to have was it would lose sync and on warm reboot, and I wouldn't be able to get it going, and it's not having that trouble now. So I'm pretty thrilled about that too. There we go. There's the right background. This is going to be a long bit of video here, but that's okay. This is vintage computing for you. I don't know. I mean, I'm going to have chapters on here, so feel free to fast forward if you don't want to see all this. If you haven't already. Yeah. Come on. Trying to think of anything else. It couldn't hurt to have a retro bright, but it's winter here, and the last time I tried to do that, I ended up painting the computer because there was not enough sun to really bleach it in a day, so it had to sit out there so long that the cream developer solution I was using kind of dried up in some areas, and I ended up with a streaky computer. That was actually my Windows 98 machine with the Voodoo motherboard in it that I had to paint with a cream color to make look like a normal computer again. So, almost booted. I don't know why this volume is so slow. The other volume has tons of stuff on it, and I've been meaning to delete some extra stuff on those. And this one is super slow. I know, we need date and time. All I want to do is go to System Profiler. Power Macintosh upgrade. Nice. All right, so we are here. I am going to do some benchmarks because I'm not going to have you sit through 20 minutes of that. And I actually picked up, and it's in this anti-static bag here, a stock Color Classic logic board. I told myself I wouldn't do it, but it was a decent price, and then the seller couldn't move it at the price he had and did it a little bit less. It has a ton of capacitor goo around the sound chip and stuff, so I've got a bit to go off there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run some benchmarks. All right, so here we have Macbench 4. I went with Macbench 4 because, well, okay, mostly because Action Retro used it in his video with his Power Mystic build. And he was missing the 256K level 2 cache, so I wanted to know just how big of a difference that made. The yellow bars here are on the 040, so this is a fat 040, so it gets better than 1% on the floating point here. We're at 13 here and 35% on the processor. The base system is a Power Macintosh 6160, and that's obviously 100%. So we are 11% faster than that with the card installed and that processor running, which makes sense. 60 to 66 megahertz, 10% increase. That's going to mean this base system does have the cache installed. So floating point, we're at 139%. I'm not sure if that's erroneous or what's going on there. The Action Retro video, he got 120% here as well. So yeah, there was a 20% drop there. On the processor score, flying toasters, he got 77%. So you're looking at about a 30% decrease in performance by missing that level 2 cache. Now, Macbench 4 is great, except it doesn't run on 68030s. So I can't put the Classic 2 on here, and I can't put the stock logic board, which is alright, I guess, because this board is disgusting, and it really needs cleaned. And typically, we have our New Mexico heat and dryness to finish drying boards, but I have to actually bake this one, so I need to make that happen at some point after I wash it. Now, while Macbench 4 is great for showing this particular aspect, it doesn't quite show why we have to switch between two processors. Because, I mean, we look at that Mac bench score and we go, okay, 35% to 111%, like, it's 4 times faster. What do we have to switch between them for? Well, Speedometer here allows me to run tests with PowerPC code. We won't switch native mode. Between PowerPC code or 68K code. So what I've done here is I booted the machine up with the 68040 and ran the benchmark, and then I booted it up on the PowerPC side and ran the 68K benchmark. So the base model system here, which is the 1.0 score, is the Quadra 605. And based on the math processor score of almost 20 here, it's an LC 040. So without the math coprocessor, because we just obliterated it here. But if you look at the CPU score here, we've got 1.15. Okay, 25 megahertz to 33 megahertz, a little bit faster. I would expect to see more than that, but what are you going to do? Over here, the PowerPC card running the 68K software is a 0.57. So while the CPU is much faster at running maybe native code or agnostic code, it doesn't run 68K code all that fast because, like I said before, it has to run an emulation layer on top, and so it has a lot of overhead. And at 66 megahertz, it just can't keep up. So we're looking at, what, maybe a 4-to-1 on this? So if we were at 120 megahertz, we could emulate the 040 just fine, but at 66, we can't do it. So, yeah, that's the benchmarks. Let's, these are boring, though. I don't know of very many Mac benchmarks that are actually cool to look at. So, let's switch over to maybe a little bit of eye candy and talk a little bit more about it. Who doesn't like eye candy? So, I gotta tell you, I haven't played with the wireless functionality of the Blue SCSI V2 yet, but the CD mounting is game-changing. If there is an ISO available for software you want to install, by far the easiest way to get it on the machine is to just download the ISO on a modern computer that can do 4 megabytes a second download or something like that, and just have it mount. Make the SD card something easy to get to, like I have here. Pop it out, copy it, set CD4, for example, and go. That's exactly what I've done here. And I'm going to play this Blizzard demo for you. Off of an ISO. Cinematics look really good on this machine. I am impressed with this. Trying to run the same cinematic on the 68040 won't even launch. It tells you it can't run it.
I can't see a thing, Jim. Well, hold on. I swear, it's always some damn thing. Wait, got it. Ah, hell, this thing ain't gonna hold. Shut up. Damn, you're ugly. You girls strapped in nice and tight now. Tighter than your mama legs. That's a good one, Mick.
It's almost too loud.
Locked in and cruising.
What you got for me out there, Joey Ray?
We got terror for sure. I don't know about the rest. We got a big old buttload of floating debris out here. We hit pay dirt this time for sure.
So yeah, that runs great. Cinematics look amazing on this machine, I will say that. But like I said, when you have the 040 up, you can't even open this. It says it requires a PowerPC processor, which was always the bane of my existence when I was younger. You know, I got hand-me-down machines and stuff. You know, you're a kid. You don't have money to buy a new computer, especially in the day these came out. So when I had a 68,000, I needed a 68030. When I finally got a 68030, I needed a 68040. And by the time the 040 got into my hands, needed PowerPC, is what it is. But one game that I have always wanted to run on this machine, and obviously until it was considered a power Macintosh, it couldn't be run, was Diablo. And it runs. Barely. But it does run. Kind of a weird thing to see on something that was considered so underpowered when it came out. I mean, I get that this is so far removed from what it was when it came out, but yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and hit single player here and show you how it plays. It's not necessarily the most fluid game in the world on here, but it does run. I don't think Starcraft will. Starcraft needed a Pentium 90 on the PC, and we're a little behind that on here. But we may get to that. We may get to that. I have picked up a tool to help us get a little bit faster on this guy, and that's not going to be for this video. I think we're long enough here. But yeah, you can see walking around on here, it is not a great experience. Would I have played this? Probably. But it does play. So, that's what we've got. So here we have it, the Power Mystic Color Classic. Remarkably fast compared to stock. I will demonstrate more of the stock downsides and such a little bit in a different video. Probably when we can really humiliate that board after overclocking this guy. I had also mentioned there's another mod that involves a, hot air gun and stuff, so we'll see what we can get there. I do know that I need to get a polarizing filter for this guy to get rid of the glare on the screen, but yeah, that's all I have for you today. Thanks for watching.